Well, I think that's always important with any player. You know, we're going to succeed or fail as a team, and it's for everybody to contribute. We've, you know, one of the things we tried to ensure right the way through the last 4 years is that it's collective expectation. We couldn't put all the pressure on Harry Kane. We couldn't put all the pressure on Raheem, other players. And we've got to make sure that's the same with Jack. He's at a super start to his international career. I think he'll be able to handle the attention because he's a player that thrives under that pressure. He's got great courage with the ball. So I don't think that will faze him. But equally, you know, it's going to be this the squad and the team that bring us success as a collective.
Just a couple of questions for Kieran. Kieran, first of all, you obviously play with a lot of the best players in the world and against them in Spain. How impressed have you been with Jack, and how good do you think he can become?
Yeah, Jack's been fantastic, you know, especially training with him for England, and like the past few games that he's played, you know, he's playing with real confidence. He's showing his ability, and as a character is a really good lad on and off the pitch. And, you know, Jack's got everything to be a top player, and if he keeps playing like he is with the freedom and enjoying himself, which is the most important thing, he can go all the way to the top.
There's also been lots of talk recently, Kieran, about formations. Lots of people saying maybe it's time for England to switch back to a back four. Obviously, you were part of that back four that won away in Spain a couple of years ago. Do the players have any input when it comes to the formation? And would you prefer to play in a flat back four?
For me personally, you know, coming over England, you're playing any formation, and you know, if we play in the back three, the back four, you know, we'll work hard on the training ground in different systems. But we've been playing the three, and if you just look at the game against Belgium the other night, the way we pressed, you know, the way we kept the ball, played out from the back, and you know, it's a formation that we're comfortable with. You know, we create a lot of chances, but you know, no matter what formation we play, you know, we'll create chances, we'll score goals, and for me, it doesn't matter if I play in a 3 or a 4.
And Gareth, everybody seems to have an opinion about 3-4-3 at the moment. A lot of people saying that it's too cautious, it's too conservative. Do you think it's time to switch back to a back four, especially against sides who maybe you're expected to beat?
Well, I think we were very exciting to watch against Ireland 4 or 5 days ago. I think we were very exciting to watch against Belgium. Statistically, you know, our job is to analyse games during and after them, and there's our coaching eye on how we played, but then we look at the data, and that's as good a performance as we've had against any of the big nations. The interesting thing is that there's a perception we didn't start the game well. In the first half an hour, we had more attempts on goal than Belgium. Possession, they had a tiny bit more, 52%, but we had more of the dangerous attacks and more shots on goal. So I understand once they were ahead in the latter stages of the game, maybe they sat back a bit, but I think that's partly because we pressed so well and they couldn't get out. So that performance was, in actual fact, contrast to Spain, which everybody's talking about, that was their worst performance statistically. There were other things we did brilliantly that night. We played with great endeavour and we counter-attacked really well. But the perception of that game is not the reality. And so as a coaching team, we have to look at, if you perform to those levels every week, you'll lose games. If we perform to the levels we did against Belgium, we'll win games. And so it's a fascinating debate because, you know, the perception, especially after a defeat, there's always a narrative and there's always a story. And whichever way we play, there'll be strengths and weaknesses to the team. So we've got to try and find the best path. We've got to keep improving it. I think we've seen that it can be a system that has flexibility, can be adaptable. Different profiles of players in different positions can change it. So that's what we've done for the last few games. And then we'll get to the end of this camp and we'll review everything ahead of March.
And just on Marcus Rashford, a few people appear to be sort of subtly criticising him. We hear people saying that footballers should stick to football. Is it time for people to accept that players are not robots and machines, and they're human beings, and they're allowed to have a life away from football and pursue their own interests?
I think I don't really understand those comments. I think the days where players just focused on their football and did nothing else are in the far and distant past. Modern players recognise they have an opportunity to make a difference, whether that's in their local community, whether that's on a broader scale. They have a voice, they have a social media presence. You know that as a sportsman, you're going to have a second career when you finish football. That's the reality. So I don't know why they would limit themselves or mentally limit themselves to just one thing. Of course, it's important that your training isn't affected and that your focus on games isn't affected, but it's possible to achieve that balance, I think.
And just a final question from me on this whole issue of 5 substitutes. How much would it help England in the Euros next summer if the Premier League was to change its rules and allow 5 substitutes per game?
Well, we're in a unique period, and we pushed for 5 changes in the Nations League. It wasn't there in September. We got it installed for October, November. We've got a condensed season with a high level of matches for everybody and no winter break in the Premier League. So how do we lessen the load for the players? And that is, as I can see, the only way to do that. Fortunately, a lot of the injuries are small muscular, but then every now and then we're getting more serious ones. And the worry would be that we're not even into the heat of the season, really. December, January are going to be incredibly intense. And then post-Christmas, when European competitions kick back in again. So, everybody has a responsibility. The whole calendar is the responsibility of everybody. But certainly the 5 subs has helped us. We've done our best to try and manage this period. And I think the clubs, if they review it in the right way and think about what's important for the players and their squads, because if they lose players, then they're going to have to invest money in more. I think there's a lot of sense in looking at it.
Next, we'll go to Kerry Brown from BeanymanSports.
Gareth, there's been a lot of attention focused on this international window, the increase in the number of COVID positive tests and the injuries. Is the international window, though, getting a bad rap? There surely would have been midweek games if the league fixtures were taking place across the world. Why is it so valuable that the countries do meet, get their teams together collectively?
Well, firstly, as I've often said, to represent your country is the greatest honour. So, of course, club football is important. It's everybody's start point. But every player wants to represent their country. In whatever sport you play, that's the pinnacle. And you don't get the chance to do it very often. So, although it's been complicated this year, from an England perspective, we've tried to manage that as best we can. No player to this point has started more than 5 matches. We've played 7. In fact, Kieran is one of the 3 that started 5, and we took him out of 2 of those games during them. Declan is the other one, the other outfield player to be in that situation. He doesn't have European football. So we've tried to manage that as best we can. We're representing 50 million people, and we're trying to prepare for European Championship. We've had 7 games in 12 months, and we've got 4 more games in the next 4 or 5 months to prepare for European Championship. Adding to that, players want to play. They want to achieve personal landmarks. They want to win caps. They want to score goals. So I totally understand the big picture in that it's difficult for every club, especially. And we were talking about the collective calendar. It's the collective. It's not international football on its own that's causing the issue. It's the collective load of everything. European matches, club matches, international. And I said at the beginning of the week, there was a missed opportunity to deal with all of that ahead of a Winter World Cup. So we are where we are now, and everybody's trying to manage it as well as they possibly can. But of course, everybody is also realistic enough to know that they've got to try to get their team as well prepared as they possibly can.
You mentioned that opportunity, that global football really had a chance to come together and look at that calendar and that opportunity. We've seen elite club coaches conferences at UEFA and FIFA. Would you welcome a COVID elite club coach and international coach forum that you can all talk about the situation you find yourself in and the welfare of your players?
Well, I'm not sure we need it, because I think all of the coaches would feel the same. So, but they don't vote in the end. They don't have the say, and we need the administrators to make the right calls on that. So I don't think there's a manager in the league who or in international football who wouldn't be of the same opinion of the importance of trying to manage training load, manage work, manage the number of games. But the solution isn't so easy because there's so many different organising bodies involved.
Harry, next we'll have a question from Iceland. It's Kristin Powell.
Hello, Gareth. Two questions. Iceland has 2 intense games in the short period of time. What do you make of the Icelandic teams in these games? And is it a disadvantage for Iceland to play 2 competitive games when you have one friendly and one competitive match?
Well, I was very interested in the last couple of matches Iceland played in the Nations League to see new formation, new style of play, some new players coming in. So a very different style to what we've seen in the past with the 5 at the back and playing from the back. That's a different challenge for us in the game. So I think everybody is prepared for the matches. You know, there were quite a lot of changes to the team from match 1 to match 2, and you know, you've got some good younger players coming through as well. So I'm sure they'll be ready for this match.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Next question from James Ollie at ESPN.
Hello, Gareth. Just looking back over the last 12 months, it seems from the outside that you've had to contend with a lot more sort of off-field issues. Obviously, the issue with Foden and Greenwood, the COVID breach there, Harry Maguire's arrest, this Iceland game being at risk due to the government rule changes. I just wondered, just from a general point of view, are you still enjoying the job as much as you were?
Well, I think it's an unprecedented, I know that's a word that's had unprecedented use, by the way, in the last six months, but it's a unique situation that we're all living in. And so everybody in the world is having to deal with different level of uncertainty, different level of focus on, you know, rule breaches, in all the events surrounding the virus. So I think everybody has experienced that, every business, every manager, every leader. Yes, it's been challenging. In any job, you're going to have moments where things are going very well, momentum's with you, and there's a better feeling about you as a manager. And you're going to have moments where you're questioned, you're challenged, you get a few things that go against you. And you have to fight through those moments, and you have to keep strong, and you have to maintain focus and make sure you're focusing on the right things and not the noise and not things that you can't affect, and be very clear on the decisions you're making and keep reviewing in a football sense. Are we making the right decisions? And if you're going to be in a big job that people have interest in, then that's the landscape. And if you're not interested in that, then go somewhere else.
Do you still sort of feel the same way about the job, though?
I came into this job with eyes wide open. You know, I lived through watching Graham Taylor, Bobby Robson, Kevin Keegan, you know, what they went through on a personal level, the abuse they suffered, the questions they faced. But also, I've seen when Bobby got the team to a World Cup semi-final, what an incredible high that was for the country. Played in '96 when we got to the only European Championship semi-final we've been to, and what an amazing feeling that was. So you've got to focus on what it could be rather than the difficult parts. That's going to come with any job. Every job of work has days where it's hard, and you've got to dig in, and life is difficult. If you're talking to a group of kids, they've got to have the resilience to get through those days. Not every day at work is going to be huge fun and everything going in your favour. It's the moments where you learn the most about yourself and about everything else that they're the character forming and areas where you improve, really. It's easy to manage it. Well, it's not easy to ever manage, but it's easier to manage when everything's going quite smoothly. When you keep getting all these curveballs that we've had, that's of course extremely complicated, but you've got to find a way through it and you'll be better for the experience.
Thanks, James. Jack Pitbrook from The Athletic.
Hi, Gareth.
Okay.
Jordan Henderson's gone back to Liverpool. Is he okay? And what does that say about the good relationship you guys have got with Liverpool on medical issues?
Well, he's gone back because he needed a scan, and we know he's out. He would be out of our game on Wednesday for certain. I think it's only right for Liverpool to update on where that will be. But I think we have as good a relationship as we possibly can with all of the clubs. I mean, we're borrowing their players, and we never want to send them back injured. That's the worst thing. I don't want it from a player's perspective, because I've been a player, and the most frustrating thing is to have to rehab, is to have to miss matches. So I understand that, and I understand it from the perspective of all the club managers. We've tried to manage that as well as we can, give the players that were in Europe some extra recovery time, manage their training load, manage the 2 friendlies. But from then on, we've got to also build our team and pick our strongest team that's available to us at any given time. We don't know who we might have available in March. This could be the last time we see some of our players before the summer. So, we've got to maximise the time we have as well.
How do you weigh up whether or not you have to be selfish, if that's the right word, when it comes to selecting players you might want to play for the Iceland game tomorrow night, given that it's no longer a game in which England can win the group?
Well, I think there are 2 parts to that. One is we've got 4 matches in the next 5 months, and we have to learn something from all of them. Tomorrow will be a different tactical challenge to the last couple of games. The second part is players want to play for England. Right. I mean, they're in a really difficult situation. They're under huge pressure from their clubs. That is going on in the background for sure. That is the landscape, whether we make it public or not. That is the reality. It manifests itself in different ways, but that's what happens. But they want to play for England. They all want to play for England. They want to get as many caps as they can. They want to do well as a team. They want to be there for their mates. And, having played for my country, I understand that as well. And but I also have huge empathy with the club managers. They know that we're not just two clubs in a title race anymore, or 3 clubs. We're 6, 7 clubs in England. And there's huge pressure on every result, and everybody's looking to try to gain an advantage. And if they feel somebody else is getting an advantage, they'll want to make sure that their voice is heard as well. So there's all of that noise in the background, but we've got to remember that we're competing against France, who pick all their players, Spain, who pick all theirs, Portugal, who pick all theirs. So I think we've tried to be as understanding as we can around training, recovery, and the friendlies in particular. But we also have to make the most of the games that we've got.
Thanks, Jack. We've got time for 2 or 3 more, starting with Alex Howell from BBC Sport.
Hi, Gareth. Just a question on Jude Bellingham. When he was at Birmingham, he was set the challenge of being able to play as a number 4, number 8 and number 10, which is why he wears the number 22 shirt. So I was wondering whether you knew that and where you kind of see him playing.
Well, his maths is better than mine, clearly, for a start. Well, I think he could end up playing any of those roles. At Dortmund, he's playing as one of 2 4s or as an 8. And most of the time at Birmingham, he was kind of in the position of an 8, really. So, but he's so young, you don't have to specialise yet. You know, a lot of midfield players, it's more important that he learns the game. He gets brilliant experiences playing in whichever positions might be his strongest. And as time develops over the next few years, it will probably become apparent which is his more suited position. But he is a midfield player who can pass the ball, who can tackle, who can break forward and score goals. So he can do any of those jobs. And I never think with young players we should rush to pigeonhole them into one. Let's see how he develops. At the moment, he's developing really well.
And just a question to Kieran, please. Just with the number of games, like, as a player, how are you finding it?
Yeah, obviously, at the start, obviously with the holidays and then coming back, but my first games was for England. But obviously, any opportunity I get to represent my country, I want to be here. So, no, but obviously playing with the European games every 3 days, yeah, it is difficult. But you know, it's just how you manage yourself on the, like you say, recoveries and to be fair, when I've come here, they've managed myself and all the other players perfectly. Because we played so many games. But like I say, it can be difficult, it can be challenging at times, but as a footballer, you want to play. You want to play at the highest level, you know, European football. And it's going to be difficult, like I said before, playing 3 games every week, but this is what we do, and every opportunity I get that I want to play. And, you know, there's no bigger honour for me to be sat here playing for England. And like I said, if I'm playing, I'll do my best, and if I'm, you know, not playing, I'll help others. I'll help the young lads coming through around me. Yeah, and that's all I can do is give 100%.
Thanks, Alex. Dan Salisbury-Jones, ITV News. Sorry, Dan, you're on mute.
Hi, Gareth. Sorry. So just a quick question on dementia. I know you've spoken about this recently, and you talked about your own concerns about your later life. I wonder if it's something that you have concerns about current players as well.
Well, I think anybody who is involved in sport is always taking a risk. I said the other day, there are risks that we take to be able to play the sport. And that could be in any number of different areas, really. But I think every player accepts that and they understand. And I don't think any of them would swap. You know, there might be a few who would later in life have some regrets. But personally, you know, whether there's joint replacements needed or, you know, I know there might be consequences of heading the ball. I don't want to experience that, but I wouldn't have swapped any of my career for any of those things later on. And I think everybody understands and is responsible enough that as sportsman, you do put yourself on the line in that way.
Thanks, Dan. And we're going to have to finish with Sam Matterface from ITV Sport.
Hi, Gareth. You had a few chances in the game against Belgium, quite a few on Sunday night, without really testing Thibaut Courtois in the second half. You only managed a penalty in the game against Iceland in Reykjavik, and 2 games against Denmark drew blanks. Are you concerned that when you've changed your system, it's actually led to less of a goal output? And is that something you've been trying to find a way to rectify?
Well, we were 4-3-3 in Iceland, so that's important to remember that. And we scored 3 against Wales and we scored 3 against the Republic. So the games with Denmark and Belgium are high-level games. I mean, Denmark are 8th on the world rankings in terms of European teams, and Belgium are top. Ours was a very tough group. Against Denmark away, we were still in pre-season, and at Denmark at home, we were 60 minutes with 10 men. We can't ignore the obvious that as we're piecing together the system we've been working on, the goal scorers in our squad, whenever I used to look at the squad list, Danny Welbeck was always on there as one of the regular goal scorers. At the moment, our goal scorers over the last few years in terms of real numbers have been Harry Kane, Raheem and Marcus Rashford. And we've had Raheem for 2 games and Marcus for 2 games. That inevitably has a bit of an impact because your other goal scorers are just emerging at the moment. Mason's got a couple for England. We've had, trying to think who else, Jaden's got a couple for England. We've get goals from our set plays. But our attacking players that are in the squad are newly emerging, really. And so the other night, we didn't have recognised goal scorers who have scored goals regularly for England on the pitch. And that's going to come with those lads as they play more games. But we haven't had Marcus and Raheem for many of those matches. And at the moment, they have been the guys that have chipped in with those goals as well.
Is that a reason then why you have to ensure that tomorrow night you do still use some of your more established players, or you've got players that you want to get on the pitch to try and experience that?
Yeah, we've got to try to find the best way of opening up what will be a very tightly packed defence. And we want to learn a couple of things about players in certain positions. So we're constantly looking to improve and evolve. And the attacking patterns that we worked ahead of Belgium worked really well. The same against Ireland, and we've got to do the same tomorrow night against another team who will defend resolutely.